Today, our first guest is Alexandra Kaub, an undergraduate student in the Accelerated Bachelor's of Nursing program. She is based at the Detroit campus and is set to graduate in August of 2024. In addition to attending lectures in Detroit, Alex has completed several clinical rotations in the Detroit area at Focus Hope and at Henry Ford West Bloomfield.
Alex graduated from MSU in 2016, earning 2 degrees, Bachelor's of Science in Human Biology and a Bachelor's of Science in Interdisciplinary Studies of Health and Society.
In the years since earning her first degrees, Alex worked at a local Detroit nonprofit organization at a Medicaid Medicare Insurance company and for the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services, where she was data tracking during the pandemic. A little over 1 year ago, she decided to leave the corporate life and become a healthcare professional. While applying for the ABSN program, she worked the night shift as a patient care tech on a Surg unit at Ascension Providence Novi Hospital.
After graduation, Alex is looking forward to a job at the bedside nursing in a currently undecided specialty, but is excited to continue to grow through her upcoming variety of clinical rotations. She looks forward to providing quality, compassionate care to her future patients. Okay, so welcome, Alex. So what is your program of study?
Thank you for having me, you guys. So right now I'm studying towards my Accelerated Bachelor's of Science of Nursing. And it's like a 15 or 16-month program, and I'm about halfway through. And I'm really enjoying myself. I'm really looking forward to continuing on.
So, Alex, where do you want to go with your career and why?
So currently I am undecided, and I've really only been exposed to Med-Surg, which is like, as you guys know, general practice, general care, both through my night shift tech work and through my clinicals. But next semester, we're doing ICU, labor and delivery, and pediatrics. And I think that that's going to kind of broaden my scope a little bit. But I think that not having decided right now isn't really the worst thing, because it hasn't kind of closed my options off. It hasn't tightened me down to, only one thing. I think that I'm really open to any opportunities, and the right thing's going to come to me.
There's so many different options out there in nursing, and that's what I think makes it so great. All right, so do you want to share with us a little bit about what's your why? Why do you want to become a nurse?
Yeah, so working in the corporate life, I kind of realized that my quality of life was based off of being around other people and reaching out to my community, and I think that I noticed that there was a need for quality healthcare. I know through the pandemic, it was really hard to watch just these nursing shortages and this staff shortages. So I think that I was sitting there during the pandemic just kind of feeling like helpless, that there was nothing I could really do behind a computer working from home. So I, first of all, just want to serve my community and make people's quality of life better. But I think for me, I needed a better work-life balance. I think it was really important to me to enjoy what I do and to feel like every day that I have a purpose and that I'm learning and that I'm growing and I'm engaged and my brain's working. And I think with nursing, it kind of comes down to having the right people doing the right job, and that you have to have the right intentions to be in nursing or any kind of healthcare field for that matter, because you really have to have the heart behind what you're doing, and you have to know that you want to serve your patients and create better patient outcomes.
Me and Alex, we first met. I was actually teaching Med-Surg for a clinical group on Alex's unit where she's a tech.
Yep.
And I first met her there. And I remember kind of as I was going through the chart and I was kind of going through looking up my patients for the day for my clinical group, I could hear Alex talking to her patients and to her coworkers, and I could see how much she was making that human connection. So then I was really pleased when she shared with me and said, hey, I want to go to the ABSN program at Michigan State. And I was like, wow, that's great, because we love students here that love to make that human connection and love to connect with others, both with their faculty, with their staff, with their patients, with their fellow nurses. And so I was really encouraged when we first met when you said that you wanted to go to our ABSN program. I was like, I'm rooting for you. I hope you get in. Because,
that was absolutely the moment I needed, because I think that was maybe the second time that I saw Michigan State students at Ascension Novi. And the first time I approached a couple of the students and I was like, hey, I'm getting my applications in. What's your advice? What do I need to know? And they were so helpful and kind. So then when I saw you on my unit, I was coming off of a night shift. I was like, it was a long one. And I had already gotten my application in, and I was in that waiting phase of waiting to hear back. And just to see, the Spartans come on the floor, and I was like, wow, they're actually out. They're not just behind, they're not in a lecture the whole time. They're actually here, like where I can see them. I know it sounds crazy, but it was just really, it was a positive kind of affirming moment. And then of course meeting you, and you were so kind and so helpful, and kind of like reassuring me that, it's going to work out.
So Alex, you're in the hot seat. You're the person who is on the floor, and somebody comes up to you and asks, what's your advice to becoming a nurse in general?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I do think that education is a privilege. I know for a lot of people, it's hard to just kind of restart and go back to school. And I know that that's, even for me, was just such a privilege to be able to do this. But I think that it took kind of a moment of decision to know that, I had to look for my options. I had to do the research. I had to search for programs that were right for me. But it kind of took a decision, a turning point almost, where I was like, I had to decide that nursing was for me. And thankfully, I've had a lot of really great influences in my life. Some wonderful people who were like, this is perfect for you. And then I had to, kind of get together the materials. I did have to take a couple of refresher courses. So just because I've been out of the game for so long, I did retake anatomy and phys. I had to take microbiology. So I did go back to school part-time at a community college. And then that's about when I started my tech job at Ascension. So it was kind of not uncomfortable taking a step back from having like a full-time income to kind of going to part-time night shift tech work. But I think that I really put my faith into this process, and knowing that like this was going to work out. Either way, like I had to have this, and that this was going to work out, and this was going to be the right thing.
What would be your greatest reward of the program so far? What do you think?
Definitely the human connections.
Okay.
Just the influence in my life, meeting some of these patients, feeling like I'm useful, feeling like I'm purposeful again, and that I'm able to contribute to someone's life and their quality of care. I've learned so much from my patients alone. Just their different life experiences, getting to talk to them about their families, their marriages, how they engage in their health, the things that they need. I always love asking my patients, I'm like, what makes you really happy? And I get a whole variety of answers. Or sometimes I ask for marriage advice, and I'm like, hey, you've been married for 65 years. What's the secret? Right. The fact that while I'm providing care and I'm using like the science of nursing, and I'm using that kind of mindset, I also get to engage with people on an emotional level. And I think that that's what I needed.
So Alex, given what you know now, what do you wish you would have known when you started the program?
Wow. Maybe I wish that I had like known more about the clinical experiences. I wish that I had known which hospitals we would be at, which is always evolving too. I'm part of this pilot program. I didn't know that I was going to be getting into it, but it's really great. We're currently at the Detroit Medical Center for our classes, but Michigan State's Detroit location, they put us into this pilot program where all of our clinicals are at Henry Ford. So I've gotten to be familiar with this hospital system, and it's kind of opened up some doors for career connections. So I wish that I had known back then that this would happen. But it's cool being in the first cohort that gets to have that experience.
The way we've done clinical traditionally, we felt like we needed to do a bit more. We felt like it wasn't enough. We felt like we're always looking here on how we can do things better. Right. And that's one area where we saw we had an opportunity to partner with some of these hospitals. So I don't know if you want to expand on a little bit more about your experience. What a day in a life is somebody in that program looks like, because it is a certain cohort of individuals that are in that clinical model. So
I didn't even know that it existed. So when that was presented to us, in our first semester, I was like, oh, all right, cool. Like I'm in. So, so the College of Nursing actually partnered with Henry Ford Hospitals. So it's kind of a new merger that we've been a part of. And so basically our lecture center, we're currently as nursing students, we're borrowing space from the medical college at the Detroit Medical Center. So we're going to be getting our brand new space for nurses. So we'll have a new location, I think for the upcoming cohort, they said. So it's at a Ford hospital downtown in Detroit. So we'll have a new simulation lab. We're going to have all this new technology that we're really looking forward to. But on top of that, all of our clinical rotations have been at Henry Ford hospitals. So we've been at Kingswood Hospital for our psych rotation, and then we've been at Henry Ford West Bloomfield. And that's been really great because we've been able to form roots at these hospitals and kind of get to know the staff, get to know the people on the floor. So instead of switching hospitals between semesters, we just stayed on the same unit, and we really got to know the nurses. But to that benefit too, we've actually been passing meds day one, which is weird because you wouldn't assume that you'd be able to do these kinds of things because, without your instructor, but they cross-trained these nurses. So all of these preceptor nurses know the limits of your practice, and together you can pass meds, you can put in Foleys, you can do NG tubes, you can do all of these things that you would regularly have to wait for your instructor to do with you. So it's kind of been great to kind of like hit the ground running on day one. Of course, albeit scary for the first couple of weeks, but it's, I think, kind of given me a better foothold for what I'm going to experience when I get out of this program.
So what brought you to be a Spartan nurse? I mean, you had a lot of other programs that you could have went to. What brought you here to Michigan State as a Spartan nurse?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I really wanted my clinical rotations to be in the Detroit area and be at Detroit hospitals. So I thought that was really great that there was a satellite location nearer to my home. But then it kind of came down to, Michigan State's like a research-based institution. So not only are we learning the interventions, we're learning the reasoning why. And, we do these things called care plans, which I'm sure all nurses know what those are. But the fact that we get to access these scholarly articles and be able to back up why we're doing an intervention and understand the rationale, I think that it's making me a more informed nurse.
And knowing the research and the evidence behind those interventions, it allows us to always ask questions as to, could we be doing something different? Could we be doing, challenging the status quo? Because that's how healthcare really evolves, is by challenging that status quo and saying, okay, we've been turning patients Q2 hours. Is that the best choice for our patients, right? Why do we do things this way? Asking those why questions is really important. So that's great. I'm glad you brought that up.
Right. I mean, it's one thing to know that you have to do something for your patient, but then to understand the rationale or even to correct what you believed was the right thing to do. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh, okay, I got to keep this person on bed rest so they can heal. But no, it's after surgery. You got to get them up. You got to get them walking around, and here are the reasons why you have to do these things. So I think the learning and putting in the work right now with this program is going to help me in the future in my practice to be like, hey, I remember reading this article, that they found in 2019 that blah, blah, blah,
That's awesome. To be a Spartan nurse leader.
Yeah.
And actually create change in the workplace and in your profession. Join us in welcoming our second guest, Jacob Bride. Jacob is current graduate student in the Doctor of Nursing Practice Adult Gerontology Primary Care Nurse Practitioner program in the College of Nursing at Michigan State University. Jacob is in year 3 of the program with anticipated graduation of April of 2024. In addition to clinical rotations, Jacob and his doctoral project partner are working with individuals with Parkinson's disease in the Lansing area to better understand their experiences with managing their disease. Jacob is a graduate of both the College of Natural Sciences and the College of Nursing at Michigan State University, with bachelor's degrees in human biology and nursing.
Outside of academics, Jacob has worked at the bedside at Sparrow Hospital in Lansing, Michigan since 2019, at the Med-Surg Pavilion, with additional Med-Surg experience at Henry Ford Hospital in Jackson, Michigan. After graduation, Jacob hopes to continue his passion for helping individuals age gracefully by working with them in the adult and geriatric population. So, Jacob, what is your program of study?
So I'm currently working on Doctor of Nursing Practice, Adult Gerontology, Primary Care, Nurse Practitioner program.
But where do you want to go in your career, if you know?
I'm not entirely sure. So a lot of my clinical experience has been acute care in the hospital, and kind of transitioning to primary care has been a very exciting but also kind of eye-opening experience to learn what it's like outside of the hospital for not just patients, but also for like nurses and also providers. Transitioning to primary care, you kind of have a different perspective on how things are going to operate compared to acute care. So I'd like to see myself probably eventually in like an internal medicine or family medicine office. So I'm kind of growing and building relationships with patients that you don't always get from the acute care side of nursing, where you're seeing people in the hospital, kind of seeing them unfortunately at their worst, but then you're hopefully giving them enough tools and enough education so they're successful when they get home. Where in primary care, you're following up, you're learning about their relationships, you're learning about their families, you're learning about what helps them the most, be the most successful. And so that's kind of the thing that's been most exciting about this transition, is kind of learning more about people and having a little bit more continuity with patients and individuals.
So you talked about why you wanted to transition from acute care to being in the primary care setting, focus on the overall patient wellness and things. What is your why? Why do you want to be in as a nurse practitioner?
So when I first started nursing, I think my focus was on just getting through the clinical steps through the day. And as I got more confident and I kind of got through that aspect of just making sure you're doing the daily duties, then you kind of learned that everybody in the bed or everybody in the hospital or, as you're seeing, is really a story. It's not just, they need their blood sugar taken, they need their labs drawn. Their stories about, what got them there to that point. Like, did they have trouble affording their medications? Did they have trouble with transportation? And so that's kind of what's evolved as my why, because when you're in the acute care setting, you only have so much capacity to sort of battle or combat some of those barriers, and everybody has barriers. Even the healthiest people still have barriers to getting health care, and they just have less of those barriers to overcome. And what you find, or what I found in acute care, is people that I potentially was seeing a little bit more often than most was they had a large number of barriers to overcome. And so trying to transition to the primary care, where you can listen about those barriers and kind of work with them in details, that was kind of my main why. I wanted to be more impactful than what I was feeling I was being.
So I love that you talked about, hearing the whole story of the patient. It's so impactful because, often these patients do have so many stories, and it's not just a decision not to take their meds. It's not just their decision. There's all these other things that could impact that, to them adhering to those kind of things. So I love that you say that that's your why. That's awesome. You mentioned the social determinants of health. If you want to maybe expand on that for those of our listeners that may not know what the social determinants are and how they might factor into maybe your care that you're providing your patients.
Yeah, so social determinants of health is kind of a big umbrella term, but essentially it kind of boils down to quite a few things, like an individual's health literacy. So we learn in nursing that we have to make sure that we're not using medical jargon to bog down patients, because they might not understand that. About where individuals live, if they have safe housing, if they have the ability to go outside and exercise in a safe area and they're not worried about glass on a playground, or they're not worried about potential violence in their neighborhood. whether they're able to get healthy foods in their neighborhood, or if they live in a food desert where your closest grocery store is a gas station, and you're going to be getting packaged foods and things high in sugar and high in refined sugars. And so there's been a lot of research that says that your health doesn't always just depend on how healthy you are, but sometimes it depends on your address and where you grow up and where you live. And that is kind of where social determinants health is, and kind of understanding that there's more than just someone being healthy and not healthy. It's the socioeconomic factors. It's the patient's ability to have and be able to progress through sort of these healthy habits that we stress, and when we're educating the patient, and we're hoping that they're able to do, but they might not be able to do that.
What was your process of becoming a Spartan nurse, and why did you become a Spartan nurse?
So my original, when I first started my human biology undergrad degree here at Michigan State University, I wanted to become a physician, and I was very dead set on it. I actually got a call from a student advisor, and she at the time said, "I'm looking at your classes. Are you sure you don't want to go into nursing?" And I said, no, I'm pretty sure that I want to go human bio. I want to become a physician. So I did the whole process of taking the MCAT and going to conferences, getting my application ready. And then I kind of took a little bit of time after my undergrad degree to say, am I ready for this whole process? Because they really preach that it's a very grueling process. So I wasn't quite sure, so I took a year off from school, and I worked as a patient safety sitter, which is someone in the hospital that sits with individuals who need 24-hour supervision, either because they are behaviorally having problems, or they're a risk for self-harm and things like that. So I was at the bedside, and I was seeing who was interacting with the patients and who seemed to be making the big difference in the room. And for me, I felt like the nurses were making a huge difference. They were coming in and they were talking, where you would only see the physician for maybe a few minutes, and then I would talk with the patient and be like, "How are you feeling after you talk to the doctor?" And they were like, "I just don't know if I was feeling heard." And so nursing, they were the ones taking the time to talk and to listen to the patients. And so that really motivated me. My mom's also a nurse, so I had a little bit of pull there from her. But I think that was what kind of motivated me to come back to nursing school and to do the Accelerated BSN program here at Michigan State. I think that prepped me too for my nursing career, understanding that it's not just someone in a bed. They want to feel heard, and there's a good chance that if they feel heard, that they'll be on board with what's going on. And so that is kind of what also kind of morphed into my why too, is you have to realize once you get past that graduate phase of nursing, what really brought you to nursing. And it's not just about doing the clinical steps, and it's not just about doing IVs and that it's about the patients, and that's what really motivates me as a Spartan nurse.
What advice would you give to those interested in going back to earn their advanced practice degree?
I wasn't a big calendar guy until I got into grad school, and now I don't go anywhere without my calendar. And if I do, I regret it instantly, because someone wants to schedule something and I don't know what my availability is. So it's just kind of talking over with family too, and talking over with your friends, and make sure you have that support system. Because I'm very thankful for my support system too. And they're understanding that even though I'm taking calls on the night before Thanksgiving to talk about my DNP project and talk about the recruiting process of that this is only kind of a short-term thing, and that they will have me back eventually. And then even when you get into the program, they talk about, if this track isn't best for you, come to us immediately. We'll work with you and we'll make sure that if you have to drop down to part-time because something comes up, they're very understanding that life happens and that we can't really always predict life.
One thing you mentioned was your DNP project. I don't know if you want to expand a little bit on what you're doing with your DNP project. I'm always interested in that.
Yeah, it's been a unique process. I didn't necessarily know what a DNP project was when I started my doctoral degree. And so it's been interesting trying to go through the steps to kind of learn what the process is. And that you kind of start out with writing in your first semester and sort of evolve into what you're writing and what a project's going to look like throughout the program. And then you start. So I'm currently working with one of my co-students here, and we are talking with individuals with Parkinson's disease about their experience with the disease and certain aspects of how they manage it and certain therapies that they have been able to do and if it helped. And so we're right now just kind of recruiting individuals to talk to them and interview them. And we're hoping to have a little bit more, people recruited here soon and chat with them and get a little bit more data. But it's not necessarily a research project. It's a quality improvement project. And so that's someone that has a very deep science background was a little bit difficult for me to kind of understand and transition to. But it's not about finding generalizable data. It's more about helping individuals in the community, but also helping nursing as well, and having us improve processes and learn more about how we can help individuals too. So that's been, that was kind of the biggest thing that I had to learn about the DNP project.
So given your 3 years in the program, what's been the greatest reward of it?
I think it's the most rewarding thing is having that kind of spark come back and that confidence and the thought of you feeling like you're helping again.
Reigniting that passion, if you will.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that.
That's awesome. That's great. What do you wish you would have known before going into the program? What do you wish you would have known?
What a DNP project is?
Hey, that's why I asked you that question. That's a good one because I remember feeling the same questions.
It took me quite a while of trying to ask multiple faculty, kind of like, am I on the right track? Because there is a lot of anxiety that, you're leading up to something and you don't fully understand what it is. And so you kind of have to take it and ask a lot of questions. And faculty recommended a couple different books for me to look at, read. I did some online searching myself to try and better understand it too. But it's very hard. It's a very difficult concept to grasp until you're kind of in it. And that's just kind of a little frustrating at first because you want to know a lot of. I'm not like the most type A nurse. I'm very relaxed, but I do still get some anxiety with not knowing certain things. And so when I was moving through the program, I was just hoping that I would have that light bulb moment like, oh yeah, this is what it's going to be. This is like I'm fully prepared for this. When you get there, you kind of learn that you are prepared for it. But there's a lot of speed bumps on the way there to getting to it. And so I think that would be the biggest thing that I wish I would have known a little bit more before I started.
Thank you for taking the time to join us today on this episode of the Spartan Nurse Podcast. To find your breaking news and latest updates within the College of Nursing, please refer to our website at nursing.msu.edu. You can also find us on all social media platforms at MICHST Nursing.
Who will transform healthcare?
Spartan Nurse as well.